I guess my question is maybe before we get into that, should we say who we are? No, we shouldn't. We shouldn't tell
ahead.
people like our names, our social security number.
If you think that is maybe a better place to start, I'm happy to do that.
I think maybe we should say who we are.
How about this?
Otherwise,
you tell people who I am, and I'll tell people who you are.
Oh, this is a bad idea.
Go. You start.
Okay, so. The other voice you hear on the other end, the lower quality recording one, is Camron, my older brother. You're what, 34? No, sorry, you're 20. He's 27, and he just, as you heard, his humble brag was that he just finished his master's degree in history, and he's currently a middle school history teacher, right, and science teacher, I think, right on the side a little bit. India.
Not on the side,
are you in?
Yeah.
You're not in Indianapolis, are you?
So, I mean, I live just outside of Indianapolis, but I teach, like, right in the heart of Indy.
Okay. Yeah, and so Camron is a drummer. He's been a drummer since you were what?
10.
10?
Yeah.
And mostly I would define you as a hobby drummer.
Yeah, that's
fair.
Like,
it's not like you don't have a degree in it, but you enjoy it enough to have just bought a nicer drum set than I own. So, and better recording equipment for your drums than I also have. So, I mean, hey, that's good. And
but I also have adult job money, right? You're still a student.
Right. My money all comes from the government, which I got to give back sometime, I guess.
All right. So, I think that was a very beautiful description of me, Parker. Thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything mean. That'll come, they'll get, later on in the later episodes, they'll start to really learn the disdain I truly do have for you. So.
All right. Well, the voice you hear with slightly better audio is Parker Stockford. He is my younger brother. He is 25, going on 26. I always get confused by that because your birthday is so close to mine.
Right. I know, because for a couple weeks, we're only a year apart.
For 6 weeks, for 6 weeks, which is more than a couple. So Parker is more of a professional drummer than I am, right? You've actually been doing this for your college degree. You took it way more serious than I did in high school, and beat me in competitions, rightly so, I should add. So Parker really knows his stuff when it comes down to theory, technique, quality. Parker really knows his stuff about percussion on the wider field, right? I tend to know just pretty much drum set at this point. That's all I've really kept up with. And even then, I feel like my knowledge of drum set would only maybe begin to scratch the surface at Parker's knowledge. So when it comes down specifically, especially, I think, to the drumming side of music, whatever I say, take with a grain of salt. Whatever Parker says, take for doctrine.
I thought you were going to say take it worth 2 grains of salt.
No, but anything Parker says about history, math, or grammar, take with a full-on salt lick, you know?
Yeah.
Like that big brick you put out to attract deer when you're hunting.
Yeah, our neighbors down the road who have a bunch of horses have those big salt licks just all over their field.
Oh, and Parker still lives in our home state in Oregon.
Yep.
You're going to Southern. Yeah. So you just started your master's degree last semester, right? At Southern Oregon University. And fun fact, we are both undergrad graduates, alumni of Brigham Young University, Hawaii.
Yeah.
Parker is a little bit less proud of that than I am.
Well, that's not necessarily
topic
true,
for another discussion.
That's not necessarily true. Well, yeah. So we'll talk about it some other time.
Okay. So back to what
maybe we should maybe really quick. Maybe we should do an episode on our undergraduate experiences.
We could.
You know,
if you want to hear more about our undergraduate experiences, call us toll free at 1-888. I'm kidding, we don't have that.
Smash that like button and throw a comment in the below box. No, but I mean, we went to the
in
same
the
school.
below
And
box? What?
In the below box, yeah.
Okay.
You've never heard some of these dumb YouTubers how they mix up all their words?
I guess they have. I mean, Hank and John Green say doobly-doo.
Yep.
Anyway.
But it's not. I feel like we went to the same school and we were there at the same time for a portion of it, and we seemed to have not drastically different experiences, but different experiences. So it might be cool to compare and contrast because it still falls under the mostly music because I got a music degree there, so most of my experience was with the music department.
And I had some experience with the music department.
Right.
I mean,
so
there was one point where I was the only person in my unit that was not a music major. So that was fun.
Yeah, I remember you telling me all your roommates were music majors and they would say stuff and you'd just be like, yep.
Yeah. I remember one time, because several of them would take the same classes together, and they were going through some point where they were getting to, like, not just the modern era of composition, but like not even like the John Cage, but the even weirder than John Cage kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, that would be Dr. Bradshaw's class.
Probably.
Shout out to Dr. Bradshaw. That was actually one of my favorite classes I took, so it was a good class.
Well, and so one of them, I'm doing my homework, and one of my roommates is just listening to one of his listening assignments. And another roommate walks in and goes, "Oh, I see you're listening to Garbage Can in C minor."
Yeah. There's one piece that's just called In C.
In C.
Yes, and it has 20 different measures, but you repeat. So you start at measure 1, and you just play measure 1 over and over and over again.
Oh no!
And it has timestamps for how long you play each of these.
Oh, geez.
And some of them are really, really long, some of them are really, really short. And the weird thing is it can be played as a solo piece, but it's also open instrumentation. It can be played as, with 20 people, 30 people, 2 people.
That just sounds awful.
It's kind of cool.
I mean, it sounds like a cool concept, but it sounds like it would just be awful.
Well, but here's the thing. So if you play it with more than one person, you have to split up into sections. Really quick, I just got a thing on my computer saying my internet connection is unstable, so you may have to do some chopping here.
And we're back. Sorry about that. Parker lives in a rural area and has god-awful Wi-Fi.
And by rural area, he means out in the middle of the woods in southern Oregon. So, and it snowed today, so there was probably some of that going on with
boonies
the
would be an overstatement.
Made it a little bit.
Or an understatement.
Well, no. I mean, we only live like 3 miles from a town, but that town has less than 1,000 people.
Well, hey, let's jump in with our topic for today. So because we discussed, you and I are both drummers. You're more professional, doing this academically for quite a while. I'm more hobby, and so while I think your tastes, as we talk about this, are going to appeal to the people who know a lot more about what they're talking about than probably I do, I feel like my tastes are going to appeal to the, I don't want to say normal people, the peons like me.
No, I know what you mean, though.
Us
I know
normies.
What you mean. Well, no, it's just, I think it's just because I'm into the, not necessarily that simplistic is bad, but I'm just more into the complex side of drumming, and so the drummers that I have picked are kind of more into that, I guess, niche area of like funk, jazz, virtuosic drummers, whereas Camron, not that his favorite drummers are not virtuosic or great, they're just more probably, I imagine, members of popular bands. Yeah, definitely
more mainstream. I think I'm looking at here.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my list that I have written down, and I think people are going to definitely know all but maybe 1 or 2 of these names. You definitely will know the groups.
Wait, how many people do you have on?
So I thought we were going to do 3.
How many people do you have on your list?
Complete favorite drummers overall, 3 favorite rock, and then 3 favorite underrated.
Oh, well, I only came up with 3 total, but I can come up with some pretty quick.
All right. So, which category did you come up with first? Just your 3 favorite drummers, complete like overall.
Yeah, 3 overall.
So I kind of
yeah.
thought that we would maybe end with that, but do you want to start with that or?
Yeah, we
Okay.
can start with that. Well, I mean, if you here, how about you start, and while you're talking, I'll come up with one of my favorite rock drummers. Okay, let's do the rock drummers first, and then we can do it in order. Like I know drummers that I like, so we can do this.
So
let's do it in order.
Let's start
like
with the rock drummers, and then we'll go into the underrated drummers, and we'll end with our personal 3 favorite of all time. And if you and I agree on some, like I know for a fact that you and I share at least one name on our list, possibly more. So it's okay if we share some of that, or if these names are in different categories across. I think that's fine. You don't necessarily have to repeat. You can maybe just say, "Here's why I like this person too, why they're on my list as well."
Right.
You know, whatever. So let's start with 3 favorite rock drummers, and I think. My top favorite, I think, rock drummer right now, this is something that changes not super frequently, but often. But I think right now where I'm sitting, my favorite rock drummer would have to be Dave Grohl.
Yeah, I can agree with you. I mean...
Well, yeah.
You go ahead. You talk about Dave Grohl.
I look at Dave Grohl, all right? And while he's not necessarily doing things that are extremely complex or maybe technically difficult, he's doing things that are very iconic, and they're defining in many ways what rock drumming has sounded like since the Nirvana era. If you look at his projects with Nirvana, right, completely changed how 90s drummers in the hard rock or rock scene really approached the kit, and that has lasted into the 2000s as well as the 2010s. You know, he worked with Queens of the Stone Age, he's worked with Tenacious D, he obviously Foo Fighters, even though he's not drumming for Foo Fighters. Taylor Hawkins drumming with Foo Fighters sounds an awful lot like Dave Grohl's style with these other groups.
Oh yeah. He also played on Killing Joke's second album in I think early 2000s. He played drums for them. I don't know if you're familiar with Killing Joke.
I can't say that I am super familiar with Killing Joke, but
They're an English rock band from they started in the late 70s, but they're a 90s era punk kind of, but they were the older guys at the time.
Okay, I know what you're talking about now. If I'm going to think more of his, I don't want to say super obscure because I'm sure people know who this is, but I would say maybe Them Crooked Vultures is what I would think is maybe his some of his more obscure work, but even then I wouldn't say it's too obscure.
Well, he also drummed on a bunch of stuff with Nine Inch Nails. I mean,
the guy has gotten around in the rock world.
For real. And he doesn't just track drums anymore either too. He'll track guitar too. He did some stuff with Paul McCartney where he tracked some guitar for Paul. And yeah, that was some good stuff. Sorry, so I'm glad that we're talking about Dave Grohl because a year ago I went on this 7-month-long Foo Fighter binge. We almost bought tickets to go see them in Portland.
So
we were gonna
cool.
buy. No, listen, we were almost gonna buy plane tickets from Honolulu to Portland to see them, stay 2 nights, and then
pretty
fly
cool.
back. And when I say we were looking at, I mean I was looking at, and didn't tell Jeanette, my wife, that I was looking at them. I was she knew that I wanted to see the Foo Fighters, and she knew that they were playing in Portland, but I was I almost brought it up to her. I almost was so we can get flights for this much, and tickets would be this. And we just I don't know why I budgeted it out, because this was at a time in our lives where we had $15. So I was just, so I went on a huge Foo Fighter binge. So to make up for not being able to see them, I just decided to read a whole bunch about them. They have a couple documentaries about them as well.
I think I've seen some clips of those documentaries. I don't think I've seen one entire one, but I remember seeing clips where they're playing at a festival, and Dave and Taylor get starstruck that the police are there. and arguably at that point in time, the Foo Fighters were a bigger name than the Police. I think the Police definitely had that wider, long-term pull, but it was the early 2000s or something like that. The Police were on a reunion tour, and they were hitting the same festival scenes that the Foo Fighters were, or something like that. And they were just starstruck that Stuart Copeland and Sting specifically were in the tent. And I might be misremembering this. It's been a while since I've seen that, but
right. Yeah, no, it's good. It's worth a watch. It's on Amazon Prime, I think.
What do you know what it's called, or just should I Google it later?
Oh, here. I'll be the Google guy for this. How about this? For this podcast, I'll be the Google guy because I'm super fast at Googling.
You say okay. Yeah, that's fine.
When I have internet that works.
All right. So, would you also put him down as maybe like your number one, or do you want to change your number one and still keep him somewhere on your list?
Yeah, that's hard to. Nah, he's not. I would say he's number two.
Okay.
My number one rock drummer is a little obscure.
Okay, well, let's hear it.
But okay, so my number one, really quick. Hang on, let me find that. The documentary is called Back and Forth.
Back and Forth. I'm gonna write that
named
down.
After their. It's named after one of their albums or one of their songs. Albums, I don't remember. And then they had a TV series called Sonic Highways that was like a docu-series, which is also named after one of their albums. Right. So, one of my favorite rock drummers, and I say rock because the genre that they play is called math rock. His name is Nathan Camarena. He's the drummer for Chong. Okay. And that guy has some of the quickest feet I have ever seen on a rock drummer. He does not use a double bass pedal. He only uses single bass pedal, and he does like threes and fours, like big-a-da-ba, like all with one foot, or sometimes I go digga-digga-da, digga-digga-da, just with his one foot.
I don't think I've ever heard of this guy.
And okay, you need to look him up. I'll send you a link, or look him up on YouTube. He has a couple of videos with Meinl where he played through a couple of their songs.
Maybe I have seen one or two of his things then.
Sorry. I think I might have sent you one, probably. He's really, really good, and he just uses a 4-piece kit. Well, 4-piece, not counting the snare drum, obviously. And then he just has like a hi-hat, 2 crash cymbals, and a ride. That's it. That's all he uses, and he keeps everything. All his drums are like set really like as tight together as you can possibly get them without them rattling together, and so that makes for his drum set looks really, really small, and he looks like he's not doing much. But you listen to some of his tracks, you should specifically listen to the song Sleepy Tea.
That's ringing a bell.
Sleepy Tea. Yeah, it's amazing. And the band is made up of 4 brothers. 2 play guitar, 1 plays bass, and 1 plays drums. And they all kind of do some singing here and there. Not all their songs have vocals, though. But he's incredible. I think he's amazing. And he's really young. He's got to be only like 20 or 21. He's younger than I am. And I'm pretty sure he's all self-taught too. Like some of these guys, when we get into my all-time favorite drummers, most of those guys have all studied music. And so this guy, for not having any formal training, he's like, it's incredible. He's like up on par with like Koba's Pot Geter, who has like no formal training whatsoever. I would argue that he's probably even better relatively, because being good at drums or any musical instrument is all relative. Okay. Exactly. So yeah, his name is Nathan Camarena.
Okay, I'll look him up. And then, so just to be clear, so that we're on track, your number 2 would be Dave Grohl for pretty much the same reasons. Anything to add?
Yeah. I really dig how they've recorded their last 2 albums on tape. I don't know why I dig that so much, but it's all been recorded on tape.
Okay.
In his home studio.
That is pretty cool.
They don't he decided. Yeah, and the cool thing too is like, since they do it all themselves, they don't have to A, pay for studio fees, B, he now, and since he's under his own, he publishes under his own label, so he doesn't have to pay. He doesn't have to worry about splitting mechanical royalties. He gets all his royalties and his publishing royalties too. And then they also get all their own performance royalties because they're not splitting it with anybody, because they publish their own music and they distribute their own music. So that's something I think is really cool. One of my favorite things about Dave Grohl is that he's like self-sufficient. He's a self-sufficient musician, which is very rare. The only other band really that I can think of that's like that would be Fall Out Boy.
I think it's getting more and more common, but it's rare to be such a huge name. And I think it's because they're such a huge name that they're able to be so self-sufficient.
Right. That's the thing. So they weren't always running off of their own label, obviously.
I gotta say, have you seen Bill and Ted 3?
So I'm...
Oh, it's way better than I expected. I watched it on the flight home from Oregon recently. But Dave Grohl has a cameo in it. And it is amazing. I won't spoil it for you. But it's just like a little...
Okay.
It's funny because of everything else that's going on. It's not like Dave Grohl comes in and gives some comedic genius performance, but it's just like, oh my gosh, there's Dave Grohl.
That's the thing though. He's like perfectly capable of being a comedic genius. That's the other thing I like about him is he's like super personable from what I've heard. Like obviously I've never met him or I would have already mentioned that.
I saw a TikTok the other day where it was a clip of him and someone had asked him a question. So are any of the songs hard or more easy? And he goes, that's a really good question actually. Let me think. He goes, yeah, some of them are hard. Well, no, actually they're all easy for me because I'm Dave Grohl.
Well, as somebody who has tried to learn guitar parts and like I've tried to learn guitar parts to their songs, and overall I would say an intermediate player would have no problem playing them, and that's not a bad thing. There are some really, really advanced riffs in there, especially in their live performances. So, like, they're very, very good. So, yeah, he's Dave Grohl. He can play that. So, I mean, they're easy for him. But for some people, just some of the way that the chord voicings that he picks on guitar can be awkward for inexperienced guitar players. So, really quick, I think if we pause for a second and explain, the reason I know that is because I'm not just a percussionist, I'm a semi-multi-instrumentalist. So I have dabbled quite a bit into guitar, quite a bit more into bass guitar, into some keyboard stuff, but so if you hear me mention I've played through guitar parts or I've played through this and this, it's because I had a lot of time towards the end of my undergrad, and so I really kind of branched out. So
I've dabbled in this multi-instrumentalist that.
Well, I was just prefacing that. I'm also prefacing that the internet might be failing again soon. Okay. I'm just letting you know.
Well, while we wait on it failing.
Oh, well, I mean, we can go ahead and move on because it looked like it.
I was going to say my number 2 for favorite rock drummers would have to be John Bonham.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. So I hear people talk about John Bonham a lot, but like, I'm not super familiar with much of his. Like, I just haven't really watched much of his stuff. So tell me about John Bonham. I know he did that thing where he played with his hands.
All drummers play with their hands.
I know he did that thing. No, but like he played on the drums with his hands without his sticks.
Just to get, a different sound, different tone. But, I mean, he's obviously famous drummer Led Zeppelin, right? One of the, if not the most iconic rock and roll group to have ever existed, right? Between John Bonham, John Paul Jones, Robert Plant, all of them, they've just got so much going for them. Jimmy Page, right? Just so much talent behind that entire group. But what I like about John Bonham is that he really is that culminating transition from the basic kind of straight eights swing era into this straight up, this is rock drumming, this is what it's going to be from now on, right? But he and Keith Moon, I think, are the two that really oversaw that. Keith Moon started out and then passed on the torch to John Bonham, who I think personally went a little bit more hard with it. I mean, John Bonham's got some... Okay. So that Foo Fighter trip you did for a year, I did the same thing with Led Zeppelin.
Okay.
So...
Then you might enjoy this book I have. I have a book of... it's like 20 of Led Zeppelin's greatest hits, but it's like lead sheets of all of that. So it's got some of like not when I say simplified, I mean like they simplify the drum track or the drum parts and stuff so it can be charted. So it's like kind of the bare bones thing for the drums as far as that goes, but it'll have like bass, guitar, and then it'll have like the melody, and it'll have all the chord changes. So maybe sometime I might show you some of that book, but it's a nice book, and it's all just Led Zeppelin.
So the reason that I like him though is because they he is just so solid with his time. Okay.
Right, because that was before you could perform live with a click track.
Well, and not even just that. I mean, like, they have songs where John is playing in 4, and everyone else is playing in a completely different time signature. So, like, Black Dog, right? He's playing in 4 the entire time, right? It's just this steady stomp beat. And everyone else, the bass, the guitar, that's playing in 5 at the same time. And it switches back and forth. And while that's not necessarily difficult for us now, that was one of the first times that it was really going on in a popular song. And, I mean, it's not just Black Dog where they do this, too. Kashmir does the same thing.
Yep. I think Kashmir is in... Kashmir alternates, too, I think. I think from 7 to 5.
I think so, but I think most of the song is in 3, and he still plays in 4.
The dun-dun-dum, 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 yeah. So that would be
3 or 6.
Yeah,
I think technically it's in 6.
I mean, I would feel it more as a 3, but.
See, I'm counting that as 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, 6. Anyway, so
But if you let's hang on for a second. If this is gonna be, if you're gonna talk about my theory knowledge in my introduction, here's how you gotta feel 6/8. You feel the dotted quarter note of 6/8. So you would feel da 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 so da da da. So let me think. So if this is the quarter note, right? Da 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 da. You feel it as.
I see.
That would be 6/8.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. I'll readily admit.
1, 2, 3, 4. Or you could go. Da-na-na, 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 da-na-na.
Okay, we get it.
You know. Well, no, I didn't say that.
I did, and
you
I'll
said
readily
that,
admit
not
to
me.
that.
That was mostly for whoever's listening
That's
if
true.
they don't know how to count
Educational.
3 and 6. You know, I want you guys to all know, too, that I have a lot of trouble
Parker
counting,
makes it to 2,
especially
and then
when
he
I'm
struggles.
playing. There's a reason I do so much listening for the pieces that I'm given, so I don't have to count. I know where I'm supposed to come in.
So John Bonham's my number 2.
Honestly.
Dave Grohl's your number 2. My number 3 for favorite rock drummers, I think, would be Chad Smith, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Okay. I could agree with that. I mean, he's not really on my list of my top 3 favorites. He'd be in my top 5. But I can agree with that. What do you like about Chad Smith? Other than the fact that he looks like Will Ferrell.
I really like his groove, right? I remember I watched this one video from a long time ago where he was performing a solo at a clinic. And I didn't really pay much attention.
Yes, the Pasek solo.
And
I know exactly what video you're talking about.
He doesn't do anything but a straight boom chuck rock beat the entire time.
You know, that was actually so what that video actually was they were doing a little competition, a clinician competition. So after they had all given their clinics, just for fun, they all did a competition with the adjudicators who did the actual drum set competition. And he actually won. just from doing his doom chak doom doom chak.
Yeah, because he kept the tempo
Continue.
perfectly the entire time.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if you remember this part about that video too, but there were several parts where he would stop playing and then come back in directly in time, not necessarily on count one. So he would come back in on the end of 3, or he would come back in on count 2, but still in the beat and he would also air drum in between too. Sometimes he would totally air drum, sometimes not for all of them. Sometimes he would freeze and then he'd come back in, or sometimes he would air drum and kind of rock his head. No, that's a good video. I've watched that video so many times.
His groove, his feel for time, his feel for groove, I think is really hard to beat. There are definitely some people who can, or at least tie him. I think Benny Greb nowadays is up there. We'll get to him.
Oh, we'll get to him. Don't worry.
But I think, and then also just personal taste, right? The kind of music that I've grown up listening to was heavily influenced by the kind of drumming that I heard with Red Hot Chili Peppers, especially like Danny California, By the Way, Hump to Bump. This kind of funk rock and then like a little bit of rap fusion in there was just...
They were supposed to be a rap group. Yes.
Yeah.
Red Hot Chili Peppers were originally... So their current singer joined as a rapper, didn't know how to sing, learned to sing along the way, and that is why most of their melodies are very, very simple melodies. Because he does not pretend to be a singer. He'll say that openly, like, I'm not a singer. We just realized our songs needed some melody, and I'm the one with the microphone. So that's why a lot of their verses are mostly rap.
I mean, it works really well.
It really does. So. Yeah. No, absolutely.
All right. Just in the interest of time, your third favorite rock drummer.
Okay. Andy Hurley.
Really? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
He almost made my top 3 list. It was he almost made it.
Yeah. I really, he has come up with some of the most iconic punk drum intros and fills that there have kind of ever been. Like you hear the intro to oh my gosh,
Sugar We're Going Down.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That's the one. I couldn't remember the I could hear it in my head. I just couldn't remember the name
Brain
of it.
fart.
Yep. Yeah, it happens. So yeah, I mean, I just really dig him. He's got a really good sense of time. And he keeps it simple. And he can play chopsy stuff. He does in his live performances, and he's really good. And he smacks the hell out of those drums, man. I love it.
So I think what is really cool, I mean, I agree with 100% with all of that. And something I just learned about him recently is he is a straight edge punk artist, which means if you don't know, or if anybody else listening doesn't know, he doesn't do drugs, he doesn't drink alcohol, and he's vegan.
Yep. He's 100%. You wouldn't know it from looking at him because he drums completely shirtless in basketball shorts. He's covered in tattoos.
The dude's buff, man. Yeah, he's ripped.
Yep. And, well, the thing is, so kind of the whole band of Fall Out Boy is kind of that way now.
Well, they were. He's the only one who still is. They've all
far
kind of gone in and out of it.
I mean, they're not really into drugs, which is good, at least currently.
Right.
I'm looking here about him, and he has a record label. It has a really funny name. You might have to bleep it out.
I know what you're talking about.
You know what the name of the record label is?
I mean, I've looked it up, and I remember thinking, oh, that's a little shocking. So I don't remember it exactly word for word, but I know.
Okay, I'm going to say it, and you're going to just bleep it, okay?
I'll bleep it out.
It's City.
That's right. Yeah.
Where are you going this weekend? Right. I don't want to say.
All right.
So yeah, Andy Hurley.
All right. So interest of time. Let's move on. Let's spend a little bit less time on this one because I want to spend a little bit more time with 3 favorite drummers for both of us. So let's go on to underrated drummers.
Okay.
So for me, when I hear underrated drummers, I think drummers that are actually really good that you wouldn't expect, either based on the recordings you hear or because you just don't hear much about them. And so my first one, and this might be a little controversial, but my first one is Larry Mullen Jr. from YouTube.
Really? Yeah.
Yes.
He is rather underrated, isn't he?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why I think so. One, he was in marching band for a long time, and so you and me, having been in marching band in drumline, can relate. But more importantly, that's why so many of his drum parts have some amount of a march feel to them, because of his, high school experience.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I think the best drumming is when the drums melt into the rest of the music, right? I mean, it's one thing, they can still be iconic, right? But it may or may not be something that you notice, right? I mean, you think about With or Without You, or Where the Streets Have No Name. You don't really think about the drum part, but if you go and you listen to it and you were to take that drum part out, the song would be awful. It would just not have that driving energy behind it. And so even Sunday Bloody Sunday is the same way. That's an iconic drum part too.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I mean, he doesn't have the best feet, and that is something he is extremely open about. He just never really cared to train his feet. But it doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter, because the way he plays is so musical with the rest of the group that it melts into the music, and that I think is amazing, and a skill that is lost on too many people.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, feet are hard to develop. You kind of have to work on them every day for multiple hours a day. It's something I'm actually working on right now as part of my private lessons, is working on my feet, because here's the thing. When you're playing a drum beat, it's fine generally, because your feet get some rest time, especially if you're just doing like a doom, 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 But if you're doing like a samba, where your foot is constantly doing like the downbeat, but also like the pickup note, so you got dum da dum da dum da dum da dum da dum, and that's really tiring, really hard, and that's what I'm working on right now, and that's what's kind of helping me develop the feet, because feet speed is easy. It's easy to do a quick little like double,
right? But it's the endurance.
It's the endurance factor, and feet are hard to develop for sure.
All right, so your favorite underrated drummer, who would you go? Number one.
You might not have even heard of him. I'm sorry that I only know like. Okay, I guarantee you've heard his drumming, but you might not have heard of him. His name is Ash Sohn.
I've heard the name. I don't know if I could point you to what he was on, but I've definitely heard the name on videos and stuff. He
drummed for Adele. He drums on a lot of pop stuff. So mainly like Adele 21, like her most famous album with Rolling in the Deep, Right. So here, I have a little bit pulled up. This shouldn't get us demonetized because it's only drums and it's him playing. But here,
I'm not worried about Parker. We're not even monetized.
Okay, cool. I just or like copyright. I don't know if we're getting in trouble.
Copyright. I'm more worried about us getting taken down. But if it's just him playing, then it's probably fine.
What I like about him is like he's got like wicked chops, because he did a Zildjian live video and he's got some like wicked hot licks for real, but like none of his Instagram posts really show those off. He always is just laying down this groove, and he actually won a Grammy for best studio drummer in I think 2016, I want to say. Don't quote me on that though. All right. So this is like, let's see, here's one. Oh wait, no, hang on. That was a weird one. Let's try to find a normal. He was messing with like an echo thing. So let's see what we can get here. And he's not like super old, but he's an older guy.
That's a nice groove.
Right? And he's just like right in the pocket. He's got one of the best pockets I think I've ever heard. And he's British, and his drum studio is an old, like 200-year-old windmill out in the middle of nowhere that he has sound treated and everything, and he just will track all these drums there and then send them off. So he's drummed for like Adele, he's drummed for Kanye, he's drummed for Taylor Swift. He's done some stuff for Justin Bieber. If you look on his website, he's got a whole catalog of what albums he's drummed on. But like, I guarantee you've heard him drum on pop tune, like on pop music.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
So
okay, so then my number 2, I'm gonna say Ronnie Vannucci Jr.
I don't know who that is.
The Killers.
Oh, okay.
Because, I mean, one, everyone else in the band says Ronnie's the real musician. So that's maybe a red flag, or maybe not a red flag, but that's a good point, a good sign right there. When people point to the drummer and say, he's the real musician in the group, listen to Ronnie. But, I mean, I've tried recently to play along to some Killers songs, and it's not like they're necessarily difficult. Right, it's very much 4 on the floor pop dance beats, right? But he throws little things in that if you're trying to play note for note, it's kind of hard. Like he'll be playing this really fast 16th note groove and then throw in some like floor toms, and he's got 2 of them, so he'll throw in the lower of the 2 and like not miss very much of that 16th note beat and keep going, and his hands just like fly around real fast, and you can watch him live doing this, and he'll be just playing in this groove really strong, and then all of a sudden his hands will just do something and it looks like he's glitching in the Matrix, and then he's right back where he was, and you've heard this amazing tiny little fill that the song would not be the same without, and yet it's mind-blowing when you actually give the Killers a listen and you listen to their drum beat and all the just the kind of things that he's doing are way more intricate, surprisingly intricate. They're not, again, they're still not crazy, right? But it's tastefully interesting, I guess I could say.
Right. Yeah. I can agree with that. I do like that, and that's the thing. Like the mark of a good drummer. I mean, everybody can play hot licks. You know, that's the thing. Everybody can have chops. You can have the best chops in the world, but if you don't know how to play musically or play the proper volume to play with other musicians, you're not going to make it. And I will be the first to admit that I play too damn loud. It's something I'm struggling with. It's something I've always struggled with, and it's something I'm currently struggling with because I'm trying to actually play with other people right now, and it's very difficult. Yeah, like I can understand. So like, you got to have a good sense of musicality to play with other musicians, and you know he's got that.
Oh, he really does. All right, your number 2.
All right, my number 2 is John Sugarfoot Moffett.
Michael
Jackson,
that guy?
Right? Yeah, he's got the cymbals behind him.
Yeah.
Dude, bro, that is so cool. So he'll just he'll reach up and just and hit those. Oh, yeah. Okay. What I like about him, so the reason they call him Sugarfoot is he always he started out as a bass guitar player. And so when he switched over to drums, when he was learning kick patterns, he was like, these are kind of boring kick patterns. So what he started doing is just emulating the exact rhythm of the bass guitar in every song that he listened to. So if you listen to like
Wanna Be Starting Something, I think is a good example of that.
Yeah, or even like Smooth Criminal. Like he didn't do it so much on the studio version. I mean, he did quite a bit, but if you listen to how he plays it live, his beat is dum you know, he does the exact rhythm with the bass. And the thing is he also only uses a single foot pedal.
Yeah.
And he always wears these fantastic shoes. They're
and
always
vests.
Bro, it's amazing. Vest without a shirt underneath. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah.
That's the best. I mean, he's got swagger, and he still, like, he rocks it. But
I think it's interesting how big his set is, because you listen to Michael Jackson, and you don't hear these huge fills, and yet he's got this gigantic set that he does use every bit of.
Yep. And he had these special cymbal stands machined so that he could have the cymbals behind him. So they're like extra long. Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. Have you seen his Drumeo clinic?
Yeah, I have.
He did a whole Drumeo clinic, and then he got some signature sticks made through ProMark, right?
Yeah.
Had them make like 1,000 pairs, and then was like, I don't want you to sell them anymore. So he's the only one that has his sticks. He still gets his custom sticks. It's a 5B, and each end is tapered and it has a nylon bead, so it doesn't matter which way you hold it.
Huh.
And it allows him. It's because he likes doing half stick tricks, so like half rotation stick tricks.
Yeah.
And so that way he doesn't have to worry about constantly trying to get back to how his stick should be. He can just play with the bottom. Yeah.
Huh. That's a good
choice.
All right.
You're number 3.
That surprised me, but that is a good choice. My number 3 is really hard for me to choose because there's 2 of them. So I'm going to tell you both of them, and then I'm going to make a decision which one I think I'm actually going to talk about. It is Tony Royster Jr. or Brendan Buckley.
Where'd you go? I can't hear you, Cameron.
Can you hear me?
Did I lose you again? Uh-oh.
I can hear you.
Cameron, stop talking. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're back.
Okay.
Welcome back.
All right, so I'm going to tell you both of mine, and then I'm going to decide which... Actually, why don't you tell me which one you want to hear about, and that will be my number 3.
Well, I can't tell you which one I want to hear about because I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm saying I'm going to tell you both, and then you tell me which one you think I should talk about.
I see. Okay.
All right, so Tony Royster Jr. or Brendan Buckley?
Tony Royster Jr.
Okay, so let's talk about Tony Royster Jr. The guy has gotten around in modern music. He plays for Jay-Z, for Joe Jonas, right? He's on tour with Katy Perry right now, and the guy is in tons of stuff. He is all over the place. But you wouldn't know how good he is from his pop music drumming. He's got that solid pocket, and he's got that solid groove that you need for pop. But if you go and you watch some of these documentaries that have been made of him, and I know you've seen them, I've watched them with you at a couple of points, or some of the clips from them at least, just, how crazy insane his playing is. It's super fast, it's super articulate, it's technically insane, and it's just, oh my gosh, he is amazing.
I would say more than... So he's got what's called gospel chops, by the way.
Yeah.
Lots of linear fills, linear drumming, and so like that's the thing. Like linear drumming is super cool because it makes it sound like he's playing all these notes, when in reality he's most likely just playing 16th notes. But the way he orchestrates them around the kit is extremely. He's proficient.
Right.
He's for sure. Like all his movements are deliberate. But those gospel chops are what defines his drumming. And those are really hard to come by. It takes a lot of work to get those gospel chops.
It really does.
You have to have really good feet.
Oh yeah.
Moreover
his
than your
feet
hands.
Are insane.
Yeah.
And if you just watch, my favorite clip of his is the one where he's got the GoPro attached to his chest, or his chest or his upper chest, and so you can see just exactly how insane his hands are because they're going all over the place. And he is pretty much just doing 16th notes or some of the basic rudiments, but just them flying around the set is almost alien how fast and accurate they are at the same time. So, your third and final underrated drummer.
Okay, my third favorite underrated drummer is going to have to be Terry Bozzio.
Yeah, he is underrated. He had like a heyday, and then he's just kind of fallen out. People only pay attention to that gigantic drum set he uses.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, so he's older now. He's like 70 now, so I don't think he's playing much anymore, but most of his stuff was with Frank Zappa. And, he was inducted into the Modern Drummer Hall of Fame. And, he was just kind of a really solid, versatile player. Like, his drum set, so he used his whole big drum set, too. Like, it wasn't there just for looking at, but I feel like that was the reason it might have come about. I mean, I don't know. But, like, it is pleasing.
He definitely...
It's pleasing to look at,
Yeah, I've seen him in an interview talk about how he wanted to have an awe-inspiring drum set, but then he also wanted to have an awe-inspiring drum set he could use everything on. And so I believe, and I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but part of that drum set is tuned chromatically, and part of it is tuned diatonically. Is that correct?
Yeah, as far as I know. So he's got a few different sets of toms. So I'm looking at a picture here. He's got a few different sets of toms. He's got some rototoms and some like regular toms. And so the thing is with tuning rototoms is you can tune them chromatically because they have such a short decay. They don't ring out, and so the resonance doesn't. It's not dissonant, so it doesn't really matter much in that frequency. So when he goes to his regular toms is when you're going to want to tune those diatonically, so that way they don't conflict with each other. And you always want to tune toms about, I try to go a major third apart, just so that way if you hit them together you get some sense of, I guess, quote, harmony, even though I don't necessarily tune my drums to a specific pitch, but I tune them a third apart. But yeah, so he also had all these different cymbals that I think he arranged them by pitch, not necessarily chromatically or diatonically, because of, cymbals don't have necessarily a fundamental pitch, but he arranged them by pitch. Right. And I'm looking at a picture here, and it looks like he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kick drums that you can see.
Keywords that you can see.
And he's got this huge curvy rack for all his cymbals. He's got a glockenspiel. Oh yeah, by the way, most of his cymbals that are above him also have smaller cymbals stacked on top of them, so it's technically 2 cymbals. Yeah, gosh. And then he's got like 4 gongs behind it. No, he's got a lot of stuff. So I mean, I think he's definitely underrated, not just as a gearhead, but as, he knows how to use it all. I mean, and you thought Neil Peart's drum set from Time Stand Still was huge, or from, not Time Stand Still, Clockwork Angels tour, where he had his mallet cat and like all that stuff. I thought that was a big drum set, but Terry,
the one that rotated.
Yeah, and then Terry Bozzio's like, hold my beer. So, but anyways, so yeah, Terry Bozzio.
Okay. That is a good one, I think, to transition into our overall 3 favorite drummers.
Okay.
And I want to start with one particular one that I know is on both of our list.
I'm going to laugh if it's not on both of our lists.
Well, you told me yesterday that it's on your list. It's Annika.
Oh, see, my list has kind of changed, but we can talk about Annika Niles.
In 24 hours, your list has changed?
Yeah, I did a lot more thinking about it. Honest thinking about it. So let's talk about Annika Niles, because she is like, I would say she's tied with third place, but maybe.
So my 3 aren't necessarily in any order for me for this one, because I think they're so all up there for different reasons. It's hard for me to order them.
Right. I understand. I'm kind of the same way. So let's talk about Annika Niles.
I like. Well, one, she's just got some amazing grooves, and she has a unique setup, which now that I've tried it several times and I've gone back and forth between, high tom, low tom floor, instead of what she does, which is low tom, high tom floor, I like that one better. Yeah. Because my right hand can go straight from that high tom to the floor tom, and so I can do these kind of fast, like, drag. Really fast. Yeah. Really easily. And then it also makes me think a little bit more about how I'm doing these fills across my toms. If I'm going to just do a straight, Hawaii 5-0 kind of drum fill. Yeah. Right. I've got to think a little bit more about how I want my hands to go. And so it stretches me a little bit. It challenges me a little bit. But it also pushes me away from some of the standard go-to fills that I find myself trapped in. Right. What I like about it, too, is that since you have your low tom first, sonically, it's easier to do these lower-sounding, fatter-sounding tom fills. Right. And that's really what she goes for. A lot of times, too, her configuration will include a secondary snare drum where the floor tom goes, and then she'll scoot the floor tom. That 14-inch. Yeah, she'll scoot the floor tom back, and that one she'll have tuned as like a fatty snare. And then, or even just as a 14-inch floor tom that happens to have snare lines on it. Well, that is actually part of one of my other favorite drummers that we'll talk about in a second. I think I know who you're talking about now. So
So yeah, I really dig her setup. She's also only uses Meinl Cymbals, which are my current favorite brand of cymbals, especially because she only uses the Byzance series, which is one of my favorite series. And yeah.
Well, let's talk about her cymbals really quick. I mean, I've seen a lot of drummers use stacks, but she is the first one that I saw where I saw stacks that I thought I really enjoyed her use of. And so from there on, I've expanded to some of these drummers I was already familiar with who used stacks. Yeah. It's kind of like, oh, I don't like seafood. And then you try a new kind of seafood, and that opens you up to all the stuff that you didn't like before.
Yep. She does this. She has a Meinl trash stack.
Yes,
that's essentially,
exactly
it's just two crash cymbals. The Meinl crash, just put together like a hi-hat.
And then not just also her stacks, but also the ride cymbal work that she does.
Yeah. So do you want to know?
Because
go ahead.
I like it's kind of reminiscent of when I took jazz lessons from Dr. Dordan. Yeah. Shout out to him, right? One thing that he really drove home with me was not using the ride cymbal just to ride, but also to crash on it. But crashing on it not at the edge, but on the bow of the cymbal.
Yeah.
And how you get that extra tone, and she does that in some of the most tasty spots.
Yeah, well, and the thing is too, like her ride cymbals. So the Meinl Byzance dry ride, that's a 22-inch dry ride, and Meinl has just released this. So for all those listening, I am also a huge gearhead, so I constantly am paying attention to all the new gear that comes out. Meinl has released this thing called a magnetic cymbal tuner, and it's essentially just a piece of rubber a magnet wrapped in pieces of rubber, like it's wrapped in rubber, and you put it, and you can put it kind of like mutes the overtones of your cymbal, so that way when you crash it, you don't get so much wash. It's mostly a studio thing. But you can, if you put it towards the edge, it can make your cymbal sound a little bit deeper, fatter. If you put it more towards the bell, it'll dry the cymbal up, but give you a nice bell sound. So it's kind of it's a really cool little gadget. But she uses one of those now, as of recently, and that is what I think also helps her get that nice crash on the ride cymbal too. Plus,
another thing that I like about her. No, go ahead.
Plus, I was going to say, plus her ride cymbal is very well broken in. She's had the same ride cymbal for like 10 years. So
nice.
Yeah.
So one thing that I've really liked coming from her recently, and this is something that's been really big on her Instagram, is her hand technique, her sticking techniques. She's really been pushing that. I think she just had a book that came out, which is why.
A new practice pad book. Yeah.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten it. I haven't tried it out, but I've seen videos of people that she's reposting in her own stories or on her own Instagram, and it's some interesting exercises.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's mind benders for sure. Yeah, if you're looking for something to challenge yourself with the, it's interesting to say this phrase, to challenge yourself with the fundamentals, but. Right. That's essentially what it is. It's challenging yourself with the fundamental. You take these two different fundamental ideas, like, triplets and quintuplets, and then you put them together where one hand is playing triplets and one hand is playing quintuplets, that kind of thing. So, that's just one part of the book. But, yeah, so it's really challenging yourself with the fundamentals when they become too fundamental. And that's what I think is really, really, really cool that she's doing. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question for you. Is she in your 3 favorite drummers or no?
I'm going to say no. She's not in my list of 3 that I want to talk about. But she is definitely one of my favorites. Like, I find myself watching her videos at least once a week, honestly. So.
Oh, I'll play some of her stuff for my students when they're coming in or when they're doing independent work, because it's not, it doesn't have so many lyrics in it, so it's easier for them to focus.
Right.
But I also enjoy it because I know what's going on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so then who's the first one you would like to talk about? Maybe not necessarily your number one, but the first,
one I want to talk about is Mr. Stanton Moore. Are you familiar with Stanton Moore?
Ooh, yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm familiar.
Probably
with Stanton Moore.
The biggest name in New Orleans drumming.
Was doing.
What?
Oh yeah, Galactic, and then also his own independent stuff. Yeah, I listened to his albums, his solo albums, and his Galactic albums. I've got his signature sticks lying around here. I really like them. They were just, from the kind of stuff that I find myself playing, they're just a little too thin.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I love him.
He's got pocket, man. And like
Oh,
he's
yeah.
got that bourbon feel. Like he feels like the way he plays is just so solid, but you could tell that he probably drank a couple of bourbons before playing. And he's from Louisiana. He's from New Orleans. So it's like, and that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And he's got to be, I think, he's so good. He's got a fairly big setup too. He generally has, I think he's got three rack toms, 2 floor toms, 2 snare drums.
Stanton
Yeah,
Moore?
dude.
I've only ever seen him with the 1 rack and 2 floor, like your typical jazz setup.
You got to go watch his Zildjian live video, man. It's
I guess.
16 minutes long.
Of course it is.
Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. But then he's got like 2 or 3 pandedos. I don't know if you know what a pandedo is. It's like a Brazilian tambourine kind of. But it's a lot drier of a sound. So he's got 2 or 3 of those mounted.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's got some really good stuff. He's really, really, really good. And so I really like him. He's a powerful player. He seems like a really, really fun person to be around. Very just kind of joyful in his drumming. But he plays a lot of New Orleans jazz, but he also does a lot of funk. But he's just got this feel that I've never heard anywhere else for that kind of music.
So one of his songs with the group Galactic is in that movie. I think it's called 21.
Yep.
I'm not sure. It's that Jesse Eisenberg crime, like, heist movie.
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. He was promoting that for a while, I think, too. He was like, I remember seeing on his Instagram, he was all excited that one of his songs was in a movie. So, yeah, Stanton Moore. Man. He's one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah. He's not on my list for today, but he is also one of my big, big influences. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about, I think, would be Neil Peart.
Rest in peace. I can't believe God...
Right?
I never thought God could die.
See, I think that just between, like, him, David Bowie, Eric Clapton, a couple other of these big name people who have, died in the last few years, God's just assembling a super concert.
Wait. Eric Clapton died?
Did he? Didn't
he?
I
don't think so. I know his son died. In a
oh yeah, that happened a long
rather
time ago.
Tragically. Oh yeah. No.
No, he didn't die. Who was it that I was thinking that died?
I don't know.
No, it's someone from the Eagles who died.
That's why I was like, Eric Clapton's dead?
Glenn Frey.
Oh.
That's who it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, Glenn Frey, he died. Okay. The other guitarist. The one who actually founded the Eagles?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so that was my bet. Eric Clapton is much alive. Okay.
He's gonna listen to he's gonna listen to this and be like, "What the heck?" I'm just joking. Eric Clapton's not gonna listen to this.
Watch, you'll get
emails. Just like, hey.
So anyway, Neil Peart, and oh man, there's so many reasons to like him, and I feel like he gets maybe. I don't want to really say this. I feel like some people overtalk him as maybe the best drummer to have ever lived, and I don't think that's true. But I think he is like the technically most skilled drummer to ever play in rock.
That I can agree with that. I think the other thing too is there's a difference between iconic and best. And like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
That man, there are still a lot of Rush tunes that I can't play, there
are Rush tunes you will never be able to
play.
play.
Exactly. And even if you have the charts, which I do for a lot of them, and he was just so... I think what a lot of people, when they say he was the best drummer, I think he was just so creative. That's the thing. His creativity was so much farther ahead than even his bandmates.
Well, yeah. Well, so they hired him because he was willing to write songs.
Yeah, and
the other two didn't. Alex and Geddy were like, we don't really want to write music. Maybe one or two here and there.
He wrote all the lyrics
and
himself.
Their songs are Yeah, and that's why they're super libertarian.
Yeah.
He was a huge Ayn Rand fan.
Yeah. Yep.
like the trees. You go back and you listen to the trees, and you're like, oh, it's just a song about trees fighting.
No, it's not.
It's a socioeconomic struggle.
Exactly. No, yeah. So have you watched? There's also a Rush documentary on Amazon Prime.
Is it called 2112? Because I know that they've got a lot of stuff under the 2112 name.
I think it might be called Time Stands Still. They have a few different ones, but the one I'm thinking of...
Yeah, you're right.
The one I'm thinking of was where he talked about how like they toured with... what was that band? They toured with another band that they were always going out and partying, and Rush, the three guys in Rush, would just sit in their hotel rooms and read actual books. Like, they would always be like, Neil, do you want to go party? You want to go for a drink? And he's like, no, I'm okay. I'm just gonna stay here. And he would have a glass of wine and drink and read his book. You know.
Yeah.
And like,
I mean, they called him the professor for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. No, he was incredibly intelligent, and he was also, surprisingly, you wouldn't get this from any of his interviews. He's an extremely emotional person too.
Oh yeah, well the whole Ghostwriters, that song, but also the album that it's on, is in many parts of it about the death of his wife and daughter.
I was just gonna bring that up.
You know, yeah, because he stepped away from the band for a while, and he did this long motorcycle
So
tour.
in that documentary I was watching, I was talking about, they talk about that quite a bit. He didn't just step away from the band. He kind of dropped off the face of the earth without telling anyone.
Well, he told them that he was going to be gone, but he didn't tell anyone really what he was doing or where he was going.
Yeah, so he spent, I think it was like 3 years on the road, and he would just, every once in a while, they would just get a postcard from him, you know, of where he's been. But he went on a really long motorcycle tour, just kind of finding himself. And I mean, hey, when you got millions of dollars and you're a famous musician, that's no problem. I'd love to go on one of those trips.
Well, and the song Ghost Rider is about that
trip.
Yeah.
And it was funny too, because like he didn't do any drumming on that trip at all. Obviously, he's not going to take a drum set with him on a motorcycle trip. And so
especially not his
Especially
not his
and
drum
so
set.
when he came back, in that documentary he talked about that there was a little bit of a struggle there getting back into drumming after those couple years off. He dealt with a lot of pain in his hands and his wrists. Which is understandable, but
well, and that's part of the reason why he uses oak sticks too. And Larry Mullen Jr., going back to him, also uses oak sticks because you get some of the heft, but you don't have to work your hands as hard.
Right. It's a denser wood.
It's a denser, heavier wood. Yeah. But anyways, talk a little bit more about one of the big reasons that I think is one of the big things I think is cool about him. Probably the biggest drummer flex is the wood his drum set is made out of.
I know.
This like fossilized oak tree pulled out of a river in Romania that he happened to hear about on the news. It's not fossilized because it would be stone.
Right.
People are going to get at me for that. But it's like this hundreds of years old, almost 1,000-year-old tree pulled out of a river. He just happened to see it on the news and he was like, that's going to be a drum set.
I need it. Yeah. I think,
but yeah, I mean, I could talk for ages about.
I think, as far as I know, I think Geddy Lee is currently in possession of that drum set.
That would make sense.
Geddy Lee has got this room of bass guitars, by the way, where he has all the different colors of each bass guitar that he uses. So he generally uses a Fender Jazz bass, particularly one Fender Jazz bass that he bought in like a pawn shop for $50, or it was like $500, which normally those jazz basses are, you know, kind of expensive. But he picked it up, and Fender has made the Geddy Lee signature bass, but they cannot dial in exactly that instrument, you know, that he found, because the one that he found, the neck on it was not the same neck that came on it. Whoever previously owned it had replaced the neck. And so and that neck is just one of a kind, so they've never really been able to fully replicate it. But anyways, that's beside the point. They're all particular about their instruments, except for Alex. Alex is just like, give me a Les Paul, please, and he played it, you know. So.
All right, so your next top drummer.
I'm gonna go with Larnell Lewis.
I knew it when you talked about that big fat snare with Hanukkah.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to talk about Larnell.
Larnell Lewis, the drummer for Snarky Puppy.
Among other things, but yes, probably most notably Snarky Puppy.
Yeah, his main thing is Snarky Puppy. That man, oh boy. So let's talk about his snare drum real quick. It's literally just a 14-inch snare drum. Hang on, I'm gonna pause for a second. Jake was right behind me drinking out of a water bowl really loudly. So Larnell Lewis, his snare drum. It's just a regular 14-inch snare drum that he is. He got this idea from Robert Sputt. He's also another funk drummer. But Larnell Lewis has really kind of dialed it in. What it is, it's just a 14-inch snare drum with a floor tom head. And he has tuned it so that when the snare is off, it sounds like a fully deep floor tom. But when he turns the snare on...
And it's a deeper drum, too, isn't it? It's like a 6.5 inch.
I think it's
or an 8 inch.
I want to say it's almost a 10-inch deep. It's a pretty deep snare drum. I mean, a 10-inch deep, that's not... I mean, wait, maybe not 10. I think it is an 8.
Okay, that's a little more believable, because that's like your pork pie,
Yeah.
Big fat snare. Well, not big fat snare, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so it has a floor tom head on top, and then he has this quick release snare clutch system, so that way he can turn it on and off really, really quickly. So that drum, it sounds beautiful. He did a Drumeo clinic where he explained what it is, but he did not share any secrets as to how he tunes it. He keeps that a secret because it sounds amazing. It really does, and it's just on a regular snare drum stand, and it's just in and then he has his regular actual floor tom next to it. But what I like about Larnell Lewis even more than that is his feet. That man... I know. Yeah. I said who was it earlier that I said had great feet was Nathan Camarena.
Yeah.
Larnell Lewis's feet are even crazier. He only uses a single pedal. There was one video I watch a lot of the Vic Firth live and the Zildjian live videos, and in his Zildjian live video, he did this thing where he did, I think it was a 7 note, like 7/16 notes on his bass drum. But it was just the bass drum. So he was playing all these hot licks, and then in this moment of silence, he just went with just his foot, that fast. I have a little clip of it. I'll send it to you. But it's incredible. It's crazy. So Larnell Lewis, and he's one of the most musical drummers I've ever heard too. If you listen to his drumming on the Snarky Puppy music, so on the tune Shofukan, on Lingus, and We Like It Here, those 3 tunes are the ones where you hear some of his most musical drumming, and he's very good at opening up space and closing that space. So he opens up space by doing stuff on the cymbals without bass drum oftentimes. He'll do some crashes and rolls and stuff on the cymbals to open up that space, and then close that space by bringing in his toms and his drums, and then keeping that groove going. So he's very good at opening musical space for others to play, and then deciding when to close that. So he's definitely on my top 3. He's amazing.
Oh yeah, he is so good that he's beyond my ability to really comprehend it.
Yeah.
Which is why he's not necessarily in my top 3.
You should really watch his Drumeo clinic. His Drumeo clinic
I've seen well, he's done 2, and I've seen both actually. But the one that I've watched multiple times is where he talks more about leading your fills with your kick.
Yeah, I was just going to say he has one about feet. Yeah, leading fills with your kick that's the one. Yeah.
So then I'll do my last one, and then we'll have you close us out with yours. Okay. I mean, mine's got to be Buddy Rich.
Yeah, he was an asshole, though.
I've heard that that is over-exaggerated. I mean, I've heard the recordings of him being being that. But I've heard from people who supposedly know people who played with him or read books about it, is that he was fine until you weren't doing your job, or he thought you weren't doing your job. You're absolutely right there. I mean, he definitely did kick people off the tour bus.
Threw cymbals at their heads, that kind of thing. He threw a cymbal at Charlie Parker's head.
But you cannot deny how good that guy is. And I think any list of top drummers that doesn't have Buddy Rich on it is incomplete.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, I could agree with that. I mean, he's not a drummer I think about often, which is ironic because I use his signature sticks every day. I mean, they're not my go-to sticks, but they're one of my good favorite pairs.
Well, and I like that he's just he's so virtuosic, right? There's nothing in jazz that he could not play.
Right.
And the myth, I don't know if it's real or not, so you can maybe confirm or deny this, but the myth was that he never actually practiced outside of performances.
There's no way. I don't believe that.
I don't believe it either, but I've seen it on multiple sources where people will say, yeah, he was just naturally that good.
I mean, he definitely...
You don't play singles that fast and not practice.
Exactly, I was going to say. I mean, I do not doubt that he had so much natural talent, much more than most.
Yeah.
But, nah, he definitely practiced outside of rehearsal. Maybe not nearly as much as the rest of us humans need to, but I would say, yeah, he definitely had to do some rehearsing. Like, there's no way. Granted, his band rehearsed every day for 3 or 4 hours a day, so at some point, that becomes enough.
Right, yeah.
Like, for me, like, I am at the point where I practice so much throughout the day that I warm up in the morning, and then I don't warm up anymore throughout the day between, even if I take a break for an hour or two, my hands stay warm enough that, like, I don't really practice in the sense of, like, I don't practice so much my single strokes anymore. I don't practice because I'm in so many rehearsals all the time now that I'm not really having to do fundamental practice on some things. Let me make that clear. My drum set is that was really humbling, by the way. Recently in my last lesson, my teacher was kind of like, okay, well, I can see that there's some, he said it more politely than this, but he goes, I can see that there's some fundamental things that we need to work on. And I'm just like, dang it, I'm a grad student. But, I've been playing for 15 years. So that's a little humbling, but I can understand why people would say maybe he didn't practice outside of rehearsal. Because to a point, it'll get to a point where you don't need to,
right.
Especially because he wrote and arranged most of his tunes for his big band.
Yeah.
So he knew them. He knew the kicks. He knew where everything was, So yeah, I agree with you that Buddy Rich is definitely, I would say, one of the greatest drummers that ever lived.
Well, he's got to be.
Yep.
I mean, he defined how the drum set was set up, what kind of drums and cymbals you use. How you play. He was a big proponent of traditional grip to the point where he, like, straight up talked bad about it all the time. And yet you can see him using match grip fairly frequently.
Yeah.
But, I think he's just got so many things that he has influenced so many people over the course of the history of drumming. And I know a lot of people will come at me and say, oh, but Gene Krupa at the same time was so good. I'm like, no, Gene Krupa's great. I love me some Sing, Sing, Sing. But, like, he's not Buddy Rich.
Yeah, and, like, okay, here's the thing, too. This is going to be really bad. But at the time, Buddy Rich was really the only, okay, you may have to edit this out. But there's a very big difference between white people jazz and good jazz.
All right, we're just going to move on. I'm not going to let you finish
No,
that.
that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. Buddy Rich was the person who bridged that gap. That's all I'm going to say. That's why I have a thing against Gene Krupa for that. But
yeah, that's fair. All right, so let's hear and close this out with your favorite, your top favorite.
You already know who it is.
I do know who it is.
Benny
Which
Greb.
is why I left him off. And that's why I left him off my list, because I knew you were going to talk about it. That's the only reason he wasn't on my list.
Meine Bruder, Benny Greb.
He's not your brother.
Dude, I wish he was, though. I wish you were not my brother, and I wish that Benny Greb was my brother.
Great.
No, so Benny Greb.
Thank you.
Okay.
Love you too.
Benny Greb. He is a German drummer.
The king of groove.
Yeah, he's from
groove.
Stuttgart, Germany. He is definitely okay. So he has. I know you said Chad Smith has an incredible sense of time, but Benny Greb has one that is even. I have never seen. There's nobody that comes even close to his sense of
I
groove
think the
and
difference
time.
is Chad Smith's sense of time, you can tell is learned. He's put in so much time and practice. But you can still tell it's learned, which isn't a bad thing. You can see the skill and the time and the effort he's put in. Benny Greb seems like he was born with a metronome in his chest.
I was just gonna say, yeah. Like, Benny Greb will turn the metronome off because it's imperfect. You know, like. So I played one of his tunes on my senior recital. I played Grapefruit. And when you purchase the drumless tracks for that, he will send you a drumless track with a click, a drumless track that is panned, so click in your left ear, track in your right for performance, so that way the audience just hears the track but you still hear the click. And then he also sends you one that has no click. And he plays with his own tunes without a click because he doesn't need a click. He is the click. Even on some of these tunes, like he has a tune called Next Question where he has this long drum solo. And he has a lot of space in it. And there's a part where the brass comes back in for a couple hits, like a nice, like a 1, 2, 4, 1, and he knows exactly where that is without the click. Granted, it's his own music, so he knows. But, like, if you go listen to his version of, it's called I'm Tweaked / Attack of the 20-Pound Pizza. Yeah. That one, he always has an eighth note click chick on his hi-hat. Always. If he's not playing on a closed hi-hat, it's always going to be an eighth note. Keep beating that eighth note. And in that song, he does these things where he'll do metric modulation. So he'll be playing in 4/4 and then add a bar of 3/8, but keep his foot still doing the eighth note. So the rest of his body is playing an eighth note behind the hi-hat, but the hi-hat is still perfectly in time.
And that's something that Neil Peart was really good at, too.
Yeah.
You know, he would play, like, I think there's even a song where he played 3 different time signatures at once, or one of his solos.
Yeah,
That could be BS, but at least 2 for sure.
Yeah, and so he does, and then it'll get back on the click too, or back on the hi-hat, like on the downbeat. But he'll keep it the same, so you can hear, it's like, so if this is the downbeat, it'll be like, it sounds like it's off, but it's like the downbeat is an eighth note or a 16th note even off. So, but then it gets back on. It's very, very, it's incredible. So Benny Greb, not just for his sense of time, but he has some of the best chops I have ever seen. And he uses one tom and one floor tom.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, he gets so much out of that simple setup. Well, it's insane.
And the weird thing, too, is he does the two extremes. His rack tom is a 10-inch tom, or maybe 10-inch rack tom.
I think it's an 8.
No, it might be a 9. It's not that small. It's just I'm pretty sure it's a 10. But he uses a 16-inch floor tom.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. And he also is a user of the Meinl Cymbals series. All of his cymbals are custom. His ride cymbal he's had for the last 25 years. Same ride cymbal. Sounds great. Sounds nice and broken in. He's got a few different concept cymbals that he runs. But he does this thing where he'll start slow and it'll go right. And he'll do it with his... Okay, excuse me. He'll do it with his double bass. So he'll go right foot, left foot, right foot, left, and he'll speed up doing just alternating 16th notes like ja, gum, ja, gum, ja, gum, ja. And then it'll get to the point where he's going, he's playing 16th notes with his hands going cha ka 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 ka, but his feet are on the offbeat, so he's getting a with his feet on the offbeats.
Yeah, that's
and it's insane. Like, it's incredible. And just how he is able to just command the attention of his audience. He's just so energetic, so powerful. So he's a huge inspiration to me. He's actually inspired me to work on. So one of my main projects that I'm working on as part of my master's degree is something that he does with, he kind of not necessarily got tired of, but had trouble dealing with other musicians and their schedules and being reliable and all that. So he decided to just start singing all the parts himself rather than hiring other musicians to play the parts. So he has 2 albums that are all a cappella singing with powerful drum set underneath.
Yeah.
And so that is a project that I've taken upon myself because he's the only person that has done that. And that is a really cool concept to me. I was in a cappella groups in high school, and I've done some singing, quite a bit throughout. I'm not as good as I used to be because I'm way out of practice. But that's a project I'm working on. And he and I we haven't spoken, but we've emailed a few times, and he sent me an audio message on his kind of process with that. So that was really cool. So he's just doing some incredible things. He just came out with a new book too called "Effective Practice for Musicians."
Yeah.
And it's not just about drums; it's how to master your instrument, whatever that may be. So he's also a multi-instrumentalist, by the way. He's a fantastic vocalist. He has an album called Brass Band, and he played all the brass for it. He plays trumpet, trombone, and tuba. He plays keyboards. So he's not so much a guitar player, but he's extremely multifaceted and definitely my favorite drummer of all time. And he has been for a nice long while. He's
and that
very,
is
very good.
A well-earned position, I think.
I agree.
So I did look it up. It is a 10 by 8 inch tom. So you were right.
Yeah, then he's got his 16 by 20.
14.
I think.
16 by 14.
By 14. Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Well, this has been a great talk, Parker. Anything you want to say before we leave? Before we head out?
No. I think I'm good.
This has been Mostly Music. And there's no good way to do an outro. Oh, except for this.
We're still recording. Cameron's probably listening back to this. And I'm making sound waves so that he'll have to scan through it and listen to it. And I'm really going to say nothing of interest other than things like, I don't know. Now all of a sudden when I have to say something uninteresting, I have nothing to say. It's funny how that works. I say I have nothing to say, yet I'm still talking.